I know that the Oswald puzzle is not about the assassination or the shooting, but there's been recent headlines about the two shooters. Have you seen that, and do you have any feelings
Oh
on
yes,
that?
and that's Congressman
Okay.
Luna's remark about looking at the material and thinking that there would be at least two shooters. Now that's kind of interesting because I can't think of anywhere in the documents that we've seen that you would immediately read and go, "Oh, uh, it looks like somebody thought there were two shooters." I'm not sure what she has seen that would say that. Now, we have all come to that conclusion that there were two and probably three shooters over time. Maybe she read something that had been, a study or, so I don't know. Did she read a study that, because there's nothing in the Warren Commission, obviously, in their records or in their documents that says two shooters. That just wouldn't work if you want to convict Oswald. There's nothing coming from the FBI that says two shooters. So I don't know where she got that. That's pretty interesting. I'd be fascinated to hear that. But um, I will say what we did do in the Oswald puzzle, although in my other books, Someone Would Have Talked and Tippy Point, I do go into Dealey Plaza and the attack and those sorts of things in detail. We didn't want the Oswald puzzle wasn't intended for that, but what we do is we do go into detail in Lee Harvey Oswald, the week of the assassination, the evening before, the day of the assassination, and what Oswald was doing in regard to his agenda, and show how he was framed essentially. Um, but that's as close as we get to the actual details of the assassination. We do, I will say, we do go. We open the book with a chapter that says, "Oh, by the way, let's talk about the evidence. Let's talk about what the evidence and why the evidence in no way convicts Lee Harvey Oswald. The Warren Commission just wanted you to think it did." One of the fascinating things we go through is in the documents, and this gets back to your question of what did we learn from the released documents. One of the things we learned is that the Justice Department advisor to the Warren Commission actually advised the Warren Commission not to put anything in their report about Lee Oswald as a shooter or about his shooting abilities because they didn't think they could defend that case. It's like, what? Okay, justice does not want you to avoid Oswald as the shooter. Uh, what is this all about? And some of their own staff members wrote a long list of things that they shouldn't actually have in the report because they can't defend them. So that's all stuff we have learned from documents that have been released. So again, the book doesn't avoid the assassination per se, but it does focus on Lee Harvey Oswald.
I did see that you had something wrote up on your website about the shooting test. Do you want to touch on that at all, or is that I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
obviously important.
the shooting test. We can say this about Oswald. Okay, uh, Lee Harvey Oswald did like guns, and anybody who wants to make him totally innocent and whatever, somehow a pacifist or whatever, that's not true. He liked guns as a teenager. He talked to his friends about guns. He joined the Marines, obviously, but he bought a private gun, and got in the brig for it while he was in the Marines. He even bought a gun in Russia, bought a shotgun in Russia. When they collected his private possessions after his arrest, he's got this whole collection of shooting and sports hunting magazines. So there's no doubt that Oswald was into guns, like pretty much. I'm from his same age and time, and I owned every form of gun that you could imagine, from BB guns, pellet guns, etc. It just was the thing. If he had not been, it would be really strange down here
Right.
where he grew up. So there's no doubt about Oswald and guns. What the grave doubt about is Oswald and shooting. In the Marines, and one of the things we bring up is in the Marines, he did pace his basic shooting score. Okay, when he was going through infantry training and basic training, he shot well enough to be declared, proficient, which is their basic shooting skill level. However, the second test or the last test he took in the Marines, he dropped way down and barely passed it. and which points out the fact that he was not in an infantry career field. He did not do shooting regularly. He didn't practice. And quite frankly, there is no solid clue that after he got out of when he was in Russia, he got laughed at by the guys in the factory when he joined the shooting club and went out to practice because they expected an American Marine would be a really good shot, right? Of course, he's a really good shot. And Lee Harvey Oswald never been, uh, he could be a loudmouth at times. I'm sure that he gave the representation that he'd be a great shot, and he wasn't, and he got laughed at. When he went hunting, he didn't particularly have any success at hunting, and he stopped hunting. So he doesn't have this ongoing history. There is really no history, even with a rifle or a pistol, that he did any shooting. A concurrent. If you've been a shooter, you do have to maintain your proficiency. You have to shoot periodically. You just don't go back 5 years later and you're the same kind of shot that you were before. And this is a guy who in 1963, he was supposed to be a good enough shot to make those shots, and we can only recover 6 bullets. Like, did he never buy any ammunition? That means he didn't do any, the FBI really wanted to find that he had bought some ammunition and done some practicing, and they couldn't. So, yeah, we do bring that up. Bring that up. That's one of the fundamental issues. When I think it's more fundamental, if you just looked at what the Warren Commission looked at and didn't look at his whole pattern of shooting and interest in guns. Yeah, he was interested in guns, but it was more interested in guns than interested in shooting, which is a very different thing.
Right.
I know guys who are both. They collect guns, they like guns, but they don't go shooting every week. I know other guys who go shooting every week and, maybe don't even clean their gun. It's like, I'm into the shooting, okay, when's the last time you clean? I had one guy tell me, well, I clean it every time I fire it. No, that's not the way it works really, but okay.
Yeah, I hear you. Is there anything that you'd like to say about your book? Get
Yeah,
out there.
I think really what I'd like to say is especially for anybody who studied this for years and years and years. I have not run into anybody, even my oldest friends, who've been into this decades with me, who didn't find something new in the book. So I think I can maintain that pretty much anybody who reads it that's studied the assassination are going to find some new things about Oswald and some things that will surprise them about Oswald that have not been in the mainstream conspiracy books, because the conspiracy books largely have presented a one-sided view of Oswald. They want him to be innocent. They largely want him to be a tool. Of course, one thing we found is one of the few consistent things in his behavior is Oswald never took orders from anybody willingly. It's like, okay, you guys want him to be a tool. This is the guy who threw a drink on his NCO in the Marines, right? This is not a guy who takes orders easily. He has his own agenda. He goes his own way. So I think they'll get a different picture of Oswald that would help them grapple with who he was and really what he might have done. I think the other part is very few of them have seen an explanation of what he was doing at the time of the assassination, because that's not been out there. We've seen, and I myself have written tons about what was suspicious. Okay. And does that mean he was participating in some kind of a false flag, a witting tool of the CIA? He was willing to sacrifice himself. No sign of that. So if you want an explanation for all of those things that we wondered about, we'll give you an explanation. I can't swear that it's the right explanation. It's consistent, it makes sense, but it finally does give you, oh, if this is Oswald, this is what could have been going on with him, rather than, oh, that's just a mystery.
Do you think this is a good book if you're like a beginner in the JFK world? Is this a good beginner book, or should maybe start out with one of your other books and then lead up to this?
I think this is a good beginner book because it will tell you, it will show the shortcomings of the Warren Commission, and it will show you the real Lee Oswald. And since the whole history of this assassination has been Lee Harvey Oswald. If you get a good understanding of who he was, what his agenda was, then you can look at, that takes you to the question. The real question at the end of this book is, well, if he was framed and if he was set up, who did this and how did they manage it? And that would take you to tipping point. So it's probably a logical entry rather than starting out with the conspiracy and then going, oh, what about Oswald? It would be like, let's understand Oswald and then answer the question of who was in contact with him, who was manipulating him, who could have framed him. Because if you conclude he's innocent, somebody had to frame him, and following the frame takes you to the conspiracy.
Right on. Do you have any final message you want to get out about the file release for people that are so pretty excited about that?
I'm excited about the concept, but I would say at this point in time, maybe the point is don't assume it's been done. There's got to a lot of these executive orders that have gone out. It's sort of like, so what's the detail? What happens next? You know, don't just assume because that and everybody I've talked to seems to be assumes that it's been done because they expect that I've seen new documents. So no, don't expect that. What I would say is this: if you log into the Mary Farrell Foundation website, maryfarrellfoundation.org, we're running a continuing review of what is not only what's happening with our lawsuit to release documents, but what is happening with the document releases. And you probably need to be checking that every couple of weeks or once a month, because we will be collecting. We know enough people on the inside that should be able to give you a sanity test on what's really happening versus what the press releases might say. Because quite frankly, the press releases tend to be overblown. Claim more ground has been delivered, kind of like Congresswoman Luna's statements like, do not tell me what you saw that said 2 shooters. Don't just tell me, and am I going to see it? And by the way, why didn't you post that already? If you saw something that said 2 shooters to you, we're talking about transparency. Where's the link? So let's do some, as with everything, like sanity testing is very important.
I get it. Well, Larry, if you don't have any final, or is there anything else that I forgot to ask you or something you feel is important?
No, I think that really covers it quite well. I think it's a good starting point. I think it's a good description of what the book does and doesn't do. And I think that's good coverage. And it's good that we talked about the documents because it's definitely not all and done.
Right on.
Hopefully it's a work in progress. I sure, after 30 years, hope that it will be a work in progress.
Yeah, right on. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Larry. Hopefully next time, if you come back on again, we can talk about maybe MLK or some of the covert CIA stuff. You got a lot of interesting topics under your belt.
MLK is really interesting and deserves an in-depth discussion. Because I think the funny thing about MLK for us in our books is it's the one conspiracy that we feel we actually solved to the point where we could name names. I mean, it is done. We know who did the shooting. We know who carried the money. We know who raised the money, and it gets talked about less. I don't know exactly why, but we know more about it and talk less about it than anything else.
Right on. Well, hopefully maybe we can get into that sometime in the near future. I know you got the JFK stuff going on right now, so that's probably top of the mind, but
no, that sounds good, and I appreciate the conversation.
Right on, Larry. I appreciate you coming on. You have a good one.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Larry.
Bye.